So our next speaker is Lisa Bohm, and she leads a team of database administrators for a software development company. And she goes back looking at code all the way back to a summer project to rewrite a chemical inventory database for the research division of a local VA hospital. She went on to building front-end web applications, and then she troubleshooted problems with the web and figured out all the things databases could do. She's since then transitioned to database administration, and she's also written a book, Refactoring Legacy T-SQL for Improved Performance, Modern Practices for SQL Server Applications. So I'm going to go ahead and let you take it away, Lisa.
Hello, everybody. I've been watching the sessions today, and they've been completely amazing. So having to follow Matthew Roche is as intimidating as I thought it would be, but I'm talking about something that is very meaningful to me, that's actually directed a large part of my life. So when a week before my 21st birthday, a week before finals, my junior year of college, I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. And I went through 12 rounds of chemo and radiation, and less than a year later, there was a recurrence. And so I had more chemo, radiation, and an autologous stem cell transplant at University Hospitals of Cleveland. So dealing with those things and literally laying in a hospital bed for 26 days gives you a lot of time to think. You know, I didn't have energy to do much else, but I could observe people around me, how people reacted to me being sick, how it affected them, and how it was affecting me, and the changes it was going to make in my life as I moved on from that. So I really thought about what didn't I do that I should have done? You know, how can you live your life in a way that you don't regret things? So one of the things is to figure out, and this is different for everybody, you know, coping mechanisms and understanding yourself is going to be unique for every person. So you need to understand, and you know, there's a lot of ways to go about doing this, but it generally takes a lot of time and soul searching, potentially a counselor to help you be a third party that's not part of your family or wasn't involved in other parts of your life that can help you kind of weed out some of these things. But you need to know what you want out of life, what makes you happy. And that means you know, how are you happy living your life? Not what do you need to do to make someone else happy, right? That doesn't count. We'll touch on that a little bit. If your life ended and you were floating above your body, what would you regret not having done? For us, for my family, ever since I was sick, we always say, love you, bye. That's the last part of any conversation. And it's interesting that sometimes I slip with good friends and it's like, oh, that's what I say to the family. Mostly they're, you know, not too awkward about it, but that's important. It's important to me that people that I care about, that I think are special, know how I feel about them, right? There's a lot of not great people out there, and there's a lot of great people out there. So, you know, for me, it's letting those people know. You know, it's also having less of a negative impact on the planet, being a little bit more self-sustaining, throwing away less garbage, reusing things more, not throwing away food, you know, really being mindful that every action that I have affects the planet and everyone else on it. Right. So I've gone through all of these things and understood that these are things that are important to me. And so I can direct my actions in a way that move towards these goals, you know, doing these things in the way that I live. For you, it's probably going to be something very different, but you need to kind of figure out what that is, because once you do, then you can make a path to move in that direction all the time. You also cannot be responsible for anyone else's happiness or actions. You know, you can say things that might cause people to have hurt feelings, but that's still not your responsibility in a certain way. You want to be mindful of other people's, but you can't blame yourself for something somebody else does, right? You only have control of your reactions and the things that you do, right? And so understanding that you might contribute to certain things, but in the end, it's not your decision for that person to act a certain way, or for that person to say a certain thing, or to feel a way in a certain way. Accepting that there are many, many things out of your control. So many things out of your control, actually. Like the only thing you have control of is you, right? And for the people that you care about, or even, people who you're just, friends with, you can't fix them, right? You can't make them happy, right? It's just like you have specific things that are going to be the happy path of your life that you want to figure out what they are, so you can direct your life on that path, right? Everyone else is going to have their own path, and you can't find someone's path for them or put them on their path. You can listen to them, you can give them suggestions, but you can't fix them. So a lot of people who haven't talked to me much one-on-one, I ride my horse 5 or 6 days a week. I used to do pretty insane, cross-country jumping stuff. I have a dog. I swam. I'm very active. I'm fit. They think of me as, not having many issues, right? I have a good job. I don't have all that much stress in general to the outside person. However, right, they don't know that I went through this cancer treatment. And this kind of brings back I was home. I moved home for 9 months for this. And when I moved back to Columbus, Ohio, which is where I lived at the time, I had just bought my first horse when I graduated from college, and he was a little wild. So my coach let me take her 20-year-old pony to a horse show and show at a level. There's a level where, you're kind of amateur and you're doing it for fun, but when you hit that next level, it's like you're for real. And so the pony was older and stiff, and not, she certainly couldn't perform the movements amazingly well, but she was obedient, and I was super weak. I mean, I lost a third of my body weight through the transplant, so I couldn't physically handle my own horse. He was young, and all of the work I did with him at that time was on the ground because I just wasn't strong enough. So I took the pony, and the judge was an Olympic bronze medalist. So it was such an honor to ride in front of her. And she's a judge. She's supposed to judge what she sees, which is fair. So at the end of the test, I thanked her, which I do for every judge. And she started reading me the riot act about how I needed to get a young horse and give my pony to some young kid who's starting up, and how she's not appropriate to be showing at this level, and all of these things. And her judging me during my dressage test was legitimate, right? But her making these comments to me really brought it home that there's so much to anyone else that you don't see when you're just looking at a picture, right? You don't understand. So everyone carries their own backpack. They have their own reasons for acting the way they do. And it's going to be different from yours, even if the root cause might be the same. Someone else who had cancer is going to have a very different experience from the ones that I had. They're going to have a different frame of reference, and everyone has a different best and a different worst. So the person who told me that when they rode their bike out in the street when they were 6 years old and got hit by a car and broke their leg, and that equated with me having had cancer, and they really believed that. And it was a little bit eye-opening to understand that that was the worst thing that ever happened to them in the frame of reference. And they equated that quote unquote near-death experience with, 3 years of the fear and the tests and my mom's insurance company trying to say I couldn't be on her insurance anymore when she had the extension paperwork. And, all of the things that anyone who's had to deal with any sort of medical issue understands what you have to go through, right? And they didn't know me at the time, so understood. But understanding that they really had no concept of that those experiences were different was also very interesting, right? So they don't know. People don't understand what it's like to be in your shoes, and you're probably not going to understand what it's like to be in their shoes, right? We all have our heroes, people that we think that we build up in our minds to be the person we think they are, right? But the reality is we're all people, right? Nobody is going to be the hero that you want to believe they are. And our belief in them being better than they think they are can help build them up, but it can also cause a lot of stress. So if you feel like you're not living up to someone's expectation, if someone feels, or if you feel that someone else isn't living up to your expectation, you can let it go. Like, take a deep breath, understand that you probably don't understand what's going on. And just because you want them to be a certain way doesn't mean they're going to be. And it's okay, right? We all have to make sure that we are happy and moving along the path that we want to be moving on, right? Because again, we can only control us. We can control what we do. We can control how we react to other people. And so these are sort of the way I've had to look at many of the challenges that I faced, and it has helped. And the background behind me, that's my horse, Ben. He also was a challenge. They all are. But his favorite thing and my favorite thing, I have to say, is as soon as we're done working in the arena, I say, do you want to go for a walk? And if we're in the outdoor, he beelines right to the gate and he stands and lets me open the gate and he helps me close the gate. And we go down this road. There's a pond and there's some water running. So you get the water sounds, the woods. It's beautiful. I've seen some pretty big owls and some hawks back there. It's pretty cool. So that's how we both get through our days, our lives, and my dog too. So 10 minutes isn't a lot. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and put them in the chat and Kathy can get those to me and I can write a blog post or, fill in some more information here. So hopefully you've listened to the other presentations, be kind to people, talk to somebody if you need to talk to somebody. There's nothing wrong with having a dissociated third party, to help bounce ideas off of. And otherwise, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day and that you've enjoyed today so far.
Thank you so much. And we'll have the next session starting in a couple of minutes. I'm going to go ahead and share this. Yeah, and like she said, go ahead and put Q&A in the Q&A box or chat, and we'll get those to the speakers where we don't have time to get to them during the sessions. Next session. Our next speaker is Victoria Guarnieri, and I love her bio. This is my favorite one of the day. She's a TBA, speaker of the word no and the phrase, this is why we have coding standards. She is a spouse, parent, writer, hack, poet, hacker, data princess, geek, dungeon master, support group director, spiritual pilgrim. And she's worked in lots of industries and she loves breaking things so she can fix them. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Hope you're doing well. My name is Victoria, and I'm going to preface my talk with these are based on my personal experiences. So any information I give you is all anecdotal to me, but you might find it very helpful, and I hope you do. It all comes from my experiences with healthcare professionals and things that I've gone through. Let me see if I can share my screen, and I cannot. So I will just pull up my slide deck and talk. So life happens. Basically around December of 2020, my world collapsed. My oldest child tried to self-harm, And that brought a lot of things up that I thought I had dealt with. And it turns out I had it. And that was kind of a wake-up call for me. I was sleeping a lot. I just basically started to kind of cave inward, and I really didn't notice it. I was surviving, I was working, I was getting things done, but at home I was pretty useless. And I think the problem is I was kind of blinded in that I kind of thought that I could handle it. I felt that I kind of accepted that my own limitations, that I was able to handle it. I was able to get through it. I was walking 5 miles a day. I was meditating. I was doing all the things that I thought I should do to kind of work through the problems. The problem was I wasn't really working through it. And I basically, through the recommendations of my partner and our marriage counselor, I decided that what I thought I was doing and what I felt I was feeling wasn't necessarily right, and that maybe there was something external, and I took the red pill. So the first therapist I tried was an EMDR therapist. EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. It's a form of trauma therapy because of things that had happened in my past, high school, college, a little bit post-college with some of my parents. Some stuff that had kind of affected me, but I really hadn't seen how much it affected me because the things that were happening inside of me, kind of those neural pathways kind of got processed and were a part of my personality. And I really didn't see how they were part of my personality. EMDR is a form of cognitive therapy, and it basically allows you to work with a therapist where you go through different memories, different thoughts and patterns, and you kind of reevaluate things. And things that I thought were perfectly normal, my therapist was like, whoa, hey, that's a little wacko. Let's look at that. And so through a period of about 3 months, we went through, and it was probably one of the most amazing therapeutic experiences and the single most painful therapeutic experience I've ever been through. But it allowed me to let go of guilt, powerlessness, remorse, and things that I've been harboring my entire life. I was able to really let go. And that was really a first for me. I'd never really felt that before. It wasn't easy, but a lot of the processing happens both on a conscious level and an unconscious level. I kept a dream journal because I'd have these really strange dreams. I'd write them down, and then I'd be like, oh, that's what that means. Now I understand. And that really helped me work through a lot of the trauma. Things went pretty good. Then February, my stress level went from 7 or 8 to about 11. My ex-partner, we divorced, filed suit for custody of my oldest child. And that was a blow that I was never expecting, financially and emotionally. My stress, my irritability, all kinds of things just cropped up. And it may have been more than just having to write a really big check to an attorney. So I basically started to question if normal therapeutic means would work because of how I was reacting to things, how I was reacting at work, how irritable I was. A lot of the same symptoms I was feeling before, they were returning. and things like that. And so in high school, my parents tried to kind of fix my sexuality, you could say, and they sent me to this psychiatrist. And yeah, it didn't go very well. And ever since then, I had a really bad kind of taste in my mouth about psychiatrists. And I never really wanted to go back. And it took a lot to really accept the fact that this was bigger than me. This was affecting not only me, it was affecting my family, my partner, and that I had to kind of do something about it. So I looked for a LGBTQ friendly therapist, psychiatrist actually, and found a really, really, really good nurse practitioner who happened to have their PhD with a specialization in pharmacology here in the DFW area. And they were just incredible, a lot better than I ever thought. Like the experience was night and day. Like I can't even, it was such a powerful experience, like completely non-judgmental, asking me feedback, questions. It was just a very, very positive experience. Let's see. So after about 6 weeks, we were able to change my medications, kind of retooling things. It was a very hard 6-8 weeks. Eventually, I was able to kind of get things tuned in and energy started returning. Things started getting better. I started getting more motivation to do things at home, getting help and getting energy to do things and help around the house. And so far, things have gotten a lot better. But I think there's a certain level of control that I had to let go of. And a certain level of, I can't do this on myself. And I have to kind of trust that others in my life may see things about me that I'm not necessarily willing to see or accept, and accept their wisdom instead of my own, and know that, maybe I'm not perfect and just kind of be like, okay with that. One of the things depression does, it kind of meanders. There was a great talk a couple of talks ago about how depression kind of changes the way you think and you handle things, your defensiveness. And I think that really affects when you're thinking about therapy and how you look at therapy and things. So that was my experience. But what I think, though, is when you're looking at a counselor, it really, not all counselors are equal either. A lot of times when you have your first meeting with a counselor, you have to kind of interview each other. It's not necessarily going to be a one size fits all. Some you may click and you may not click. And you'll know if you don't click. And there's nothing wrong with that, because not everybody clicks. And if you're not clicking, it's not going to be a therapeutic response. It's going to be a very negative response. And don't forget, a good therapist should challenge you. They should challenge your beliefs. That's why you're there. They're there to help you heal, to help you grow. Here in Texas, we have a highway called I-35, or even 45 if you're in Dallas. But I-35 in Austin and Dallas, they're always working on it. It's never done. They're always doing something somewhere. There's always work on 35. And that's kind of how a good therapist kind of, helps you. There's always something that you can improve on or help with. But therapy isn't necessarily not going to hurt. Therapy is painful. If you've had painful experiences, going back and reprocessing those experiences isn't going to feel good. But like surgery, you heal those wounds. You heal from that surgery. You heal. And that's the whole point, is to heal so that you can move on past it. So you're not going through those cycles. In my therapy group, I see girls who have those cycles, who repeat the things and redo them. And I just see it again and again and again because they haven't dealt with those things. And also, a good counselor has a very strict code of ethics. If they're asking you out for drinks, or, you know, if they're trying to sell you Mary Kay or something like that, you probably don't want to see them. There's something sketchy going on there. For a psychiatrist, found that they should be knowledgeable. They should also challenge you while you're there, like just to make sure that, you know, the medication and things, you know, you're there not because you're looking to self-medicate, but you're actually there because, you know, you actually need the help, and they should challenge you a little bit.
So, Victoria,
yes,
you've gone over several minutes, so we're going to have to stop for today.
Okay, that's pretty much it. The
I
only other
apologize
thing
for interrupting you.
No, sure. And then I think the only other thing is, just remember, you should feel comfortable about, you know, how you feel and how you communicate with your therapist. That's the biggest thing, is being comfortable. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you so much. A lot of good words of wisdom. And I'm going to go ahead and if anybody has questions, go ahead and put them in the chat and we'll get them to her later. I'm going to go ahead and introduce Josephine Bush, our next speaker. Josephine has over 10 years of experience as a DBA. She has very extensive and broad experience in many different industries, including financial, business, and energy, using a lot of different systems: SQL Server, MySQL, Oracle, and Postgres. She's the author of Learn SQL Database Programming. And so I'm just going to let you take it away. You are still muted.
Hi, yeah, okay, I'm ready.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, let me share my screen with you guys. You're gonna see nothing to start here, but let me get going. Okay, so can you see it now? Is it good?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I just want to make sure. Okay, so hi and welcome to Wellness Tips for Migraine and Headaches. I'm Josephine Bush, and I have lots of IT experience. I'm currently a DBA, and you can reach me on Twitter at Hello SQL Kitty. I realized this is a lightning talk because it's like trying to catch lightning in a bottle to present all of this to you in 10 minutes. But there's plenty of links on the resources slides in case you need additional info at the end. So I've had migraine since like forever ago, and they got a lot worse in my 30s and just kept getting worse. And this is why I have so much information, so many tips I can share with you now, because over the years I've tried so many things. And then I also volunteer with a couple of migraine organizations as well. I'm not a trained medical professional. This is just the stuff I've learned over the years and things I've tried. Maybe one of them or some of them will help you. I found it's never a one and done kind of thing. It's usually multiple treatments that help in the end. I just started with my general practitioner, and then they can order an MRI of your brain or refer you to neurologists if need be. If you're not making progress that way, a lot of times specialists will just see you without a referral. And neurologists aren't necessarily headache specialists, and they may seem like they might know, but I finally had to find a doctor who is a headache specialist to get the right options. The main thing is you really have to be your own advocate and guide your treatments. Migraine is a neurological condition, and it can have head pain as a symptom, but it's way more than just head pain. And a headache can be a sign of another illness. It doesn't mean there's another illness. It could also just be that maybe you didn't sleep enough or drink enough or something like that as well. And migraines tend to come on really fast and hurt like crazy, generally on one side of the head. And they usually have plenty of other symptoms like nausea, light, sound sensitivities, or neck pain and things like that. But it is different for everyone. And headaches do tend to be less intense and come on more slowly. I think it's really important to track your symptoms and what you're doing at the time. With a printed version, you can see the entire month and then flip through month by month to see trends. And there's other free ones online, and maybe electronic versions too, if that's more your thing. Whatever really works for you in the end to track. I just like the printed ones because then I can flip back page by page and I can see back to when I started in May 2017. And there's also phone apps. I never really like them much because they're hard to really get a good idea of trends. And here's a high level overview of triggers. And they're different for everyone, but these are some of the common ones. And that's why it's important for you to track them on a calendar, because you may find it's chocolate or heat and stress, but it might not be those for someone else. And the headache diary I referenced on the last slide also has a listing of triggers. And again, that stuff's all in the resources slide too, the links for that. And the SEEDS treatment. This is really the basics of taking care of yourself, and just even more so important for people with chronic headache and migraine. It says sleep enough, eat enough regularly, exercise regularly, drink enough water, and reduce your stress. It's really something for everyone to live by anyway. And one thing to note is, interestingly enough, exercise can also be a trigger. So it's kind of a delicate balance there. For headaches, you can usually treat them with over-the-counter analgesics like aspirin, Advil, that kind of stuff. In fact, you can't take migraine medications to help a headache. The migraine meds work on a different pathway. So if you don't have a migraine, then the migraine meds won't work. It's tricky though, because sometimes the migraine meds don't help a migraine, even though they're geared to that. And it's usually not just one thing that helps treat a migraine. For instance, I need an injectable triptan and Advil. I used to do the less is more approach to meds, but I really need both. So I just do it at the onset. Otherwise, I just suffer longer. Plus, my doctor's like, don't undertreat these, because it's just harder to treat them later. You don't get them under control and they linger. The one thing on the flip side is that you don't want to take too many of these drugs in a month, like analgesics or trip or the migraine meds, because one, insurance won't approve more than 9 of any of those prescription ones. And there's a potential for rebound. So if you take too many, you could get a headache from just like day after day, then you wind up getting headaches and migraines anyway. But the thing is, if you have a lot of them, then you want to prevent them. And so there's a bunch of preventative medications, and the same goes for preventatives. It's usually not just one thing that does the trick. If one thing does, then it's great, but don't be discouraged if it takes multiple treatments in combination with one another. There's a lot of options here. And with insurance, you usually have to step your way through up to the more expensive ones, like at the bottom, like Botox and Ajovy. Those kinds of things are more expensive. And they like to see you fail, which I laugh, is not funny, but they say that, fail, it sounds horrible, but that's what they call it. And you have to fail in 3 other categories of drugs before they'll fork out the cash for the expensive ones. And that can take months and months, because each drug you try tends to need 2 to 3 months before you know if it'll work. And then finally, over a year later, I could try Botox. But important things, make sure you follow up with your doctor if you aren't feeling better. I couldn't always wait 2 to 3 months on every kind of drug that they wanted to try. And some drugs are so awful with side effects, I had to feel faster. And there's also the approval process with insurance is kind of difficult. But thankfully, once it's approved, it's much easier to get reapproval. It can be really frustrating, but the important thing is to not lose hope, because there's something out there that could work for you. Then there's devices, these neuromodulation devices that can attach to your head, or you can hold them to your neck. And they just work on the nerves that come out from the brain into the face or the neck. There's plenty of non-medicine treatments you can try. I didn't find much help with massage, PT, chiropractor, acupuncture. I actually triggered things for me and gave me a migraine. They may work for others though. And I love the Alley lamp. It's a researched green light. It's not just any light. You can't just buy some random green light. And it's really nice for when you have a migraine, but you maybe want to keep reading. And you can't have any other light though, so you can't use your phone or a computer. And I don't get kickbacks or anything on this, so I'm just mentioning it because it's just stuff I've found helpful. Ice is another big one for helping. I take meds and then I lie down with an ice pack. And there's some really nice ones like Headache Hat that you don't have to sit there holding an ice pack onto your head the whole time. And rest is a huge one. I find that taking meds and icing won't help so much if I don't just lie down and rest for a bit. So the period and headaches, migraines, the period, such a joy. So there's so many things that can delight you during that time. So there's just different times in the cycle when you can have a headache, migraine, and the most likely times are ovulation and menstruation, or the few days leading up before your period starts. There's an official diagnosis called menstrual migraine, which is caused by a drop in estrogen that happens right before your period starts, those few days before. And it's supposed to resolve itself when your period starts. The problem is it doesn't always, but they don't call the other migraines or headaches you get during the month actual menstrual migraines. Is like an official term for just those few days before, which is kind of frustrating because it's still related to your cycle. You can use the same analgesics and migraine medicines. They just might be less effective. And experts don't really know why. It might be, they think, because of how estrogen affects other chemicals. And then there's preventatives. Of course, there's the preventatives that you can take all month that I've already mentioned, every day, any day, whatever you need them. And then there's some additional options here that you could try. I found that some of these make things worse, or you take a triptan when you have a migraine and it feels, good, air quotes, because you feel better. But when you take it, you don't have a migraine, it just feels weird because you have side effects. And mind-body techniques are really helpful, I think, in conjunction or maybe complementary to medical treatments. I found the combination of mind-body and preventative meds is pretty helpful. I do yoga pretty much every day, even on migraine days, because there's some really excellent yoga for migraine resources. I think the best workplace accommodation is if you can manage to get work from home and then take relaxing breaks between work tasks. And I found that most helpful, but if you have to go into the office, you can ask for accommodations to make it easier for you to cope. And a lot of times your employer has to accommodate you because of the Americans with Disability Act. It's good to speak with HR about what you need and try to work with them on accommodations. There's also something called the Family Medical Leave Act. And I use this to make sure my employer knows I have a medical condition and I may have to be out of the office for multiple days per month if needed. Not that I will be, but it's better to have this coverage for yourself and be protected from workplace issues due to absences. And sick time can be used for this. So it's not unpaid unless you run out of sick time. And it's easy to get your doctor to fill out the FMLA form, and then you turn it into HR. Okay, that was the quick 10-minute version. So thank you for attending. Really feel free to contact me with questions or feedback. I'm happy to have a dialogue. And there's tons of links in the resources section to kind of fill in some of the details on all that high-level stuff I just gave you. So hopefully it can help you. Thank you to WIT for hosting Wellness Day and for allowing me to present. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Josephine. And I think this is something that affects so many of us. Luckily, like for me, as I got older, my migraines went away. So maybe they were cycle-related. I'm not really sure. But
Yeah.
My favorite medication was the one that was taken off the market, Migraine.
Oh, Migraine. Yeah, I was so disappointed when that happened. And my doctor won't compound it. Some doctors will still compound it, but yeah, they'll get it. Yeah.
Luckily, I don't need it anymore.
Yeah, thankfully. Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for is when, once menopause arrives, oh yeah, that'll be so nice. Yeah. Yeah.
It helped me a lot in lots of ways.
Mm-hmm.
So we got just about 4 more minutes and then we'll get to the last session of the day. If anybody has any questions, please go ahead and put them. No, nothing in the Q&A. Several people, one person mentioned had some really terrible side effects with gabapentin.
Oh yeah.
That was me. I ended up in hospital.
Oh, really? I didn't realize it was
I
you.
almost died. He didn't
wow.
agree with me at all. My heart was racing and I was sweating. I thought I was having a heart attack, and they said, If I hadn't come in, probably it would have, happened in another couple of hours.
Oh my God, that's horrible. That's
Yeah,
really bad.
they
I've had
said
some
it's
side
on-
effects. Not
We
like
have
that.
about 10 medications with the worst side effects, and it's on them.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Yeah, I've never had anything. I've had weird. So I had Rayvow is a new migraine drug. Of course, I always get the newest one. My husband says I'm a total guinea pig because I'm like always on the newest thing. And one of them gave me hallucinations. It was so insane. I didn't know I never had hallucinatory drugs before. So that was my worst side effect, but not like I was gonna die from it. That's for sure. Wow, that's scary.
We've got a couple minutes and then we're going to get Kenneth up here. Do you want to go ahead and unmute and get ready, Kenneth?
Thanks again, guys. I really appreciate this. This is really
Thank you.
fun. Yeah.
You're very welcome, and thank you.
I'll go ahead and wait about one more minute and then I'm going to introduce you and then we'll get going. So. I like your background. Is it sunset?
It's actually my last slide.
Your last slide. Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
It'll make sense.
All right. I think I'm going to go ahead and read your intro, which is very short. You've basically been a DBA. This is Kenneth Fisher, our final speaker in the lightning talk. We have one more speaker giving a full session after this. But Kenneth is a DBA of one type or another his entire career. He's been a blogger for the last 8 years and a data platform MVP for the last 4. So I'm going to go ahead and let you take it away.
Hold on, just trying to figure out how to share this. There we go. Okay. So Kenneth Fisher, and hopefully I can get through all this in 10 minutes. Last year, July 4th, I should have died. I honestly, the fact that I didn't is still astonishing to me. I woke up that morning and I'd been constipated and in a lot of pain all week. I went to the bathroom and was actually feeling pretty good about things until I thought I felt something tear, which I have to tell you is a somewhat terrifying sensation. I decided a few minutes later to wake my wife up. For those of you who know her, she goes to bed at 5, 6 a.m., doesn't usually get up until noon, and this was around 8. So she was not getting a lot of sleep. She drove me to the ER, and COVID being what it is, was not allowed to join me and had to stay in the waiting room. They took me back to one of the rooms in the ER where they told me they needed a urine sample, which I was not able to give. First of all, I was dehydrated. Second of all, the idea of pulling down my shorts was just not going to happen. I was in just too much pain. About 4 or 5 hours later, I was actually able to get a urine sample. Literally minutes after I finished, they came in and said, "We've decided we don't need the sample after all, we're admitting you." And up I go to my room, and in the process, of course, they lose the urine sample that I had gone through so much effort to get them. But on an up note, I was now in my own room, and my wife was able to join me. The doctor came in, said the test showed that I had diverticulitis, which I had been told earlier in the week. I had a severe enough case, which is fairly unusual with this, that the oral antibiotics weren't going to be enough. Diverticulitis, for those of you who don't know, there are these pockets that can form in your colon called diverticuli. If they become inflamed, it becomes can become diverticulitis, which is uncomfortable. Well, they hooked me up to an IV, and we spend the next few hours visiting and hanging out on our phones, that kind of thing. They removed the IV because they're having problems with it, because again, I was very dehydrated. They said they were going to send in an expert to replace it. Well, while we're waiting for the expert, it becomes night, and we get to watch some very nice fireworks out of my window. Well, more my wife watched them. I kind of laid there because no IV means no pain meds. And after a while, my wife, who is not the most patient person at times and definitely does not mind confrontation, saved my life. She went out into the hall and got a nurse who came in and said, I don't understand why they haven't hooked up the IV again. Let's get it hooked up. But first, let's take your blood pressure. Let's take your vitals. As best we can remember, my blood pressure was 60/30, which is low. She leaves, gets the doctor, who comes back in, same doctor, who turned out to also be the surgeon. And he says, he was wrong. I'm going to surgery. I'm going to surgery right now. They give us a few minutes while they're getting the OR prepared, and they're calling everybody to come in because it's now getting late in the evening. She has me record a video for my kids, my then 16-year-old and 12-year-old, to say goodbye, just in case. To my knowledge, no one has ever watched that video, and I think I'd like to keep it that way. They wheel me in into the prep room, and the surgeon is trying to get everything ready. They kick my wife out. She goes back to the waiting room. I asked the doctor for something for the pain, and this is something I'll probably never forget. He said, pain tells us we're alive. We can live with pain. I'm honestly not sure you'd survive whatever I gave you to dull the pain. So that is the last thing I remember until 3 days later. I woke up. I was thirsty. That's the first thing I remember thinking is I'm thirsty. My mouth is dry. I want to drink. The doctors are there. As far as I'm concerned, it's the next morning. It's a few hours later. They asked me who my wife, if I recognize this person, and it's my wife, Tiffany. But I don't remember her name. They asked me who the president is. The best I can come up with is Orange. Do not remember his name at all. During that 3 days, during surgery, it turns out my colon had ruptured. I had gone septic. I had a minor heart attack. And now, because I'm having these memory issues, they think I might have had a stroke. I spend the next week and a half in ICU. Lots of interesting stories there. Among other things, did you know they have a crane in the ICU if you're a large person so that they can lift you up into the air? I discovered this when one of the instruments fell out and they had to replace it. I'll let you think about where that might have been that they needed a crane. But eventually, they moved me into another room. This is me shortly after that. I had just been through my second physical therapy, which was literally me getting up, walking 5 steps to the sink, and trimming my beard off because it was driving me nuts. A lot happened during that time. I went through my first panic attacks. I knew that if I got out of the bed and got in the chair, everything would be okay. And I'd been told I could do that in a few hours. So I was literally counting. Got up to 20. Is that long enough? I should tell y'all, during this time, I was never alone. My wife and my mother-in-law took turns. One of them was always with me. During that time, my 16-year-old and my 12-year-old took care of each other. and took care of my handicapped father-in-law. But I got better. My memory got better. They decided I had not had a stroke. The IVs came out. I'd had an IV in each arm and one in my neck. That was freaky. Having them pull a giant needle out of your neck is freaky. And they moved me to a rehab center. The rehab center, I did physical therapy for an hour and a half a day and occupational therapy for an hour and a half a day, which was literally learning how to dress myself, learning how to take a shower, learning how to go to the bathroom. By the way, that they had to remove the 13 inches of my colon. When they did that, they rerouted it to my side. I had what's called a colonostomy. This meant that I was now pooping standing up. And I had to learn how to deal with that. And again, I was rarely alone. Of course, other than that 3 hours a day, I had to find stuff to do. My wife encouraged me to pursue one of my hobbies, which is building models, like the one I've got here. And eventually I was allowed to leave and go home. This is now 3 weeks in. Over the next few months, I recovered. I built a Death Star, Lego Death Star with my daughter. I got to present at the very last past summit. I was not ready for that. I thought I'd be better by November. I was not well enough to go through that, but I did. I managed. I turned 51. Around that time, I told my wife all I wanted for Christmas was to be able to poop sitting down. So I went back to the hospital and I got that ostomy removed, which was questionable, but it happened and I can now go to the bathroom normally, which is nice. Along the way, I learned a few things. Losing 50 pounds. During the 3 weeks I was in the hospital, I lost 50 pounds. You always think if I get that jump start, I get that head start, that'll fix everything. It doesn't. I'm struggling to maintain my weight, let alone losing more. I did not develop the good habits that it takes to lose 50 pounds. Therefore, I don't have the habits it takes to continue, but I'm working on it. I wasn't there. I was unconscious for 3 days. I was out of it for weeks. My friends and family were hit by this far more than I was. To this day, there's a twinge in my side. I get nervous. My wife goes into hysterics. Fear. Here's a big deal. I was afraid to get into a chair. I was afraid to get out of bed. I was afraid to get into bed. It was going to hurt. Fear controls your life more than I ever realized. It can take a village, even for an adult. It takes a village to raise a child. It can take a village to help an adult. Be there for each other. Be there for your friends. I cannot tell you how many kind words I had while I was recovering and still get to this day and how much they mean to me. And I'm still learning. I'm still learning how all this affected me. I'm still learning how to deal with it, and I'm still getting better. And in the mornings, I would make myself breakfast. This is before I started back at work. And I would sit down at the table and very slowly eat my breakfast because honestly, it was a lot of work. And I would feel a touch of peace. I was alive. I was getting better. I could look out the window and live. That's it.
So thank you so much for sharing your story. And we are very glad that you were able to live and had the wonderful support system from your, obviously the hospital and doctors and also your family to support you and get you well. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't think we've got any other people. Oh, there was a question. What
Victoria, honestly, the food I missed most in the hospital was food.
was
The first like 2 weeks I
Well
was on a
said.
liquid, I was on an IV and then ice chips. And they eventually moved me to a somewhat liquid diet, stuff that was easy to digest. I guess honestly, if I had to say anything, it would be eggs. I was allowed to have eggs, but by the time the eggs made it up to me, they had been in a steamer for probably a good hour. And if you've ever overcooked eggs, these were not good eggs. But I will tell you that once I was allowed to eat, once stuff actually started coming out of my side and into the little bag that was glued to my side, everyone was really excited. My wife was jumping up and down. The doctors and nurses were all really thrilled.
So, okay, well,
I've never had that much excitement, I guess, probably since I was 2 or 3 about, having a bowel movement.
Well, we're grateful to have you back. That's for sure.
so thanks to you and to all of our other Lightning Talks speakers. And we've got one more session, so please join us at that one. So thanks.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.